Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside Dave
Hello.
and John.
Hello.
Hello. First off, before we get into our podcast properly, again another apology for last podcast 2 weeks ago, which turned out to be a bleep machine show. Our podcast at the end just completely technology
Fell apart.
completely just sided. Oh my god, it was awful. So apologies for missing
It was
periods.
of the quality that our fans expect.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I think people expect
Nay,
more
nay,
now.
might even demand of us.
I think maybe if we were talking maybe a few years ago, it'd be okay. But I think now, we're supposed to be more of a well-tuned
Well-oiled
podcast.
machine.
Saying we're a
But,
slick machine these days. We are a slick hockey podcasting machine, and we still don't know what we're doing.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so apologies, but hopefully this week we will be we'll get a full episode out when we get through everything.
133 episodes down, you think we would know what we're doing?
Well, no. To be fair, we do know what we're doing. It was just technology failed us, and when I say failed us, I mean John and Aaron, who are both in Newton Abbey, actually. By the way, internet just completely shit the bed.
Well, here I am in the stable heart of super fast Wi-Fi and broadband in the heartland of Fife with my rock solid 36 megs of internet access.
Boys, how are we doing? Dave, how are you doing?
Good. Obviously, I'm sure we'll be talking about it. Looking forward to the weekend. But with nerves aplenty. But yeah, it's gonna be good.
Oh yes, we will be talking about it in the big weekend, as the title of the podcast suggests. So we will be talking about it quite often this podcast. And John, how are you doing?
Much the same. Took in last weekend's action against Manchester for the Belfast Giants, and heart was in my mouth from the get go. And by the time we got to the end of the game, I wanted to throw my phone through a window. So that tells you everything you need to know about my past weekend. And this week, I'm sure, like I put a thing out on TikTok. I think it was even the week before, and said how was everyone's nerves holding up. I can't imagine how everyone's nerves are now because mine are completely shot, and I'm not even going to be watching any hockey this weekend. I'm just going to have to rely on what I get from flash scores.
Yeah, we will get to it. So let's hold on to this coming weekend. Even when we do the standings, we're not going to go into a full detail of the standings. I'm not going to ask your full opinions on the standings this time around because I'm going to keep it to the first period because that's where we're going to talk about the big weekend, which is coming up. But saying that, let's get stuck in and let's start the way we always do it. And let's start with our standings as they currently are on the 3rd of April. We're going into the last weekend of the Elite Ice Hockey League. Sitting in the top spot is the Belfast Giants on 52 games played, 76 points. The Sheffield Steelers are in second place, 52 games played, 75 points. And the Nottingham Panthers are in third, 52 games played, 72 points. The Cardiff Devils are in fourth, 52 games played, 66 points. The Coventry Blaze are in fifth, 52 games played, 60 points. The Guildford Flames are in sixth with 52 games played, 57 points. The Glasgow Clan are in seventh with 52 games played, 51 points. And the Dundee Stars are in eighth place, 52 games played, 46 points. However, they are contesting that eighth spot at the moment with Manchester Storm, who are currently in ninth with 52 games played, 44 points, and are still in contention for that last playoff spot. So that's the big thing to be played for. Still at the bottom of the table. Five Flyers, unfortunately, 52 games played and still remain on 10 points, and John still has his nose hair. Let's just have a quick look. Belfast, Sheffield, Nottingham, Cardiff, Coventry, Guildford, and Glasgow all clinching playoff spots. That last playoff spot, as I said, Dundee and Manchester. John, let's go to you first. How do we feel that last spot's going to go?
That's a tough one. It wasn't until I think it was yesterday actually I decided to have a look at the standings for the first time in actually a couple of weeks, to be honest, since the last podcast. And I didn't realize Glasgow had clinched. So I thought there was still a little bit more sort of on the go. And then I realized, obviously looking at it, that Neither Manchester or Dundee can get anywhere near Glasgow now. They are sitting, I think, Glasgow's sitting 51 points. I think Dundee can only get to 50 this weekend. So it's between those two. Take nothing away from Manchester. Like, that result in Belfast has fired them up. They are out for blood now. Now, it's not that it's going to be hugely easy for them. They've got, what is it, Guildford and Fife. Now, the Fife game is kind of neither here nor there. But Fife, that's their last game of the regular, or well, of the season. So, and potentially the last game that they'll play in the Elite League, potentially for a while. Say potentially again, John. And they'll be out looking to get something out of that game. They've got a jersey retirement happening on that game. Todd Dutium's jersey, number 11, is being retired as part of their rolling jersey retirements. So I definitely think that group are going to be out to try and prove something, and their opportunity might be against that Manchester team. The reality is that one result for Manchester ties it up if Dundee don't win anything over their games that are coming up. They've got Glasgow, and I can't remember who their second game is against. It's also against Fife, so that's a local derby game as well. So, but that's in Dundee, so you would expect Dundee perhaps to maybe take that. Past results have shown that Dundee are pretty strong against Fife at home. The original question you asked me was, what way do I see it going? I think Manchester will be doing well to get it. I think Dundee have got at least their foot in the door. They're obviously ahead on points, tied on the number of games played. Everyone's got 2 games to play this weekend. I think Dundee have probably just gonna squeak through.
Yeah, Dave, your opinion? You think the same?
I would totally agree. I would really want to see Dundee just to have another Scottish team in that final week, in the coming through to the playoffs, and then hopefully going through to the final weekend. Nothing's better than an underdog story. And I would hope that by seeing that, we can maybe get more sort of quality out, because the Scottish teams have been fantastic this year. Now they're sitting at the bottom of the league, but they're sitting at the bottom of the league in a really tight year. And I think they probably could have been higher. But saying that, Manchester's been playing really well, and Tendek, since coming in mid-season, has been phenomenal. So it's going to be a flip of the coin, who turns up on the night and takes the points. But as John said, Dundee's going into it already in that spot, and that confidence can do wonders.
Yeah. We were talking about Fife there before we move on. Obviously, John, you kind of mentioned there that there's a possibility, obviously, that Fife will play their final game in the Elite Ice Hockey League this coming weekend. Obviously, we've seen them here in Belfast in the SSE last week. 2 games, one midweek game in which the scoreline was 10-2. I think the scoreline was 10-3. 10-4. Sorry, I should give them that. 10-4. And then at the weekend, then on Saturday, I think it was ended. It was at 9-1 or something. I think was another high scoring game.
19 goals against the 2 games.
So obviously, Giants racking up the goals against Fife Flyers, but it was definitely one of those ones where you could feel it in the arena, where people kind of were very aware that Fife could be not coming back next season and not coming back to the SSE. And there was definitely a round of applause and I think a bit of a recognition from fans who probably, it's no secret that in the SSE arena, fans sometimes tend not to clap the away opposing fans' times going off the ice, because I don't normally either, to be fair. But I know on this occasion I did, because I do have respect for the fact that Fife.
I wouldn't.
Done
I have
the best
respect,
they could.
but I still wouldn't clap.
No, I think Fife, respect's due. Possibly not going to see them again, and you do have a soft spot for Fife.
What are you clapping? Congratulations
and
on mismanaging your team and dropping out the league.
And I kind of hope that we do see one more win for Fife this coming weekend. If not just because I want to see Fife win, it is definitely because I want to see a live video of you getting your nose waxed, because I think that would be quite funny to watch. With
Listen,
that,
you know it's TikTok gold. You know
it
it's
is.
TikTok.
It is.
Everything I produce on TikTok is gold, but you know that in particular is TikTok gold. That
I
would
did
double our followership.
I did notice you were on just before we came live, so I hope you didn't give away too much of what we were talking about today. Let's switch our attention. We will come back to the top of the league in period one. So in the meantime, let's switch our attention across the water to the NHL, in which we are on the last 2 weeks of regular play in the NHL as well. I think the last games are the 14th or something around then of April. So it's that weekend. I think it's like the 14th or something of April or something around that time. So we're literally 2 weeks away from the Stanley Cup final, or Stanley Cup playoffs. So let's have a look at the NHL as it currently stands today on the 3rd of April. Sitting on the top, looking at the eastern side of the country on the Atlantic Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs are sitting top with 75 games played, 96 points, and have clinched the playoff spot there. The Tampa Bay Lightning are in second with 74 games played, 93 points, and the Florida Panthers are in third, 75 games played, 92 points. In the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals have clinched first place and also the first playoff spot there with 75 games played, 105 points. That is phenomenal point scoring. The Carolina Hurricanes are in second with 74 games played at 96 points, and they've also clinched a playoff spot. And the New Jersey Devils sit in third with 76 games played, 87 points. The current wildcard spots are being held by the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. Across the country in the western side of things, in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets have clinched a playoff spot, sitting first with 75 games played, 106 points. Again, another amazing run of points there, quite high scoring points. And the Dallas Stars are not too far behind on 102 points after playing 74 games, also clinching a playoff spot. The Colorado Avalanche sit in third place there, just above the wildcard spots. Pacific Division then, Vegas Golden Knights clinch a spot in the playoffs, 74 games played at 98 points. LA Kings are in second, 74 games played, 93 points. And the Edmonton Oilers, 74 games played, 91 points. Wildcard spots held by Minnesota and St. Louis Blue. Let's go, John. Let's go to you first. The obviously Nashville Predators are confirmed to have been eliminated from a playoff spot this season. Not surprising, sorry. But anything there? How do we feeling going into the fact that we're on the final 2 weeks? Do we see much changing in terms of wildcard spots? Is there any teams there so far that have taken you by surprise, or has just been kind of one of those things? So this season has just kind of looked like things have just kind of stayed like in a straight line for quite a few of these teams.
Well, you want to talk about teams that have surprised me? The Nashville Predators have massively surprised me by being as terrible as they have been. What's interesting, though, and I didn't realise, there are 4 teams who are currently eliminated from playoff contention. They're all in the West.
Yep.
None of the teams in the East are currently confirmed to be eliminated from the running for playoffs, which is just it's mind-boggling. But it comes back to what Dave and I say every year: is the West is a complete bloodbath. Like we knock the hell out of each other through the season to the point that teams get eliminated at this point before anything happens in the nice namby-pamby East side of the game.
Where they all sort of lose and win, and the Wild Wild West, they always end up with someone getting a thumping, like so.
Talk about other stuff going on. Like I think I've already said, I am Leafs Nation for the rest of the season. I believe this is the season, Marty. Like I am backing the Maple Leafs to go all the way this year. I believe it can happen.
I want to believe, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I desperately want to believe. Does my heart tell me that is what's going to happen? Well, there's no Boston this year, so possibility. So I don't know. I live in hope that Toronto make it through and they win the whole thing. I really do. But I mean, when you look at the likes of Washington, you look at the likes of the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars, if Toronto come up against either of those 3 teams, I mean, those 3 teams have absolutely dominated this season in their respective divisions. I think it's hard to look past those three teams and the fact that they've had such great form. But as we know, when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs, form in the league doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what's going to happen. You've got 7 games to prove that you can get through to the next part. And, we've seen the lower teams who've come in on wildcard spots come in and completely make a big difference in the past. So you never know. Fingers crossed. I know Toronto Maple Leafs aren't in that wildcard spot, but I'm hoping that they can do what they need to do. Dave, your thoughts? Obviously, Minnesota Wild sitting in that one of those wildcard spots.
Hopefully that continues. Obviously, expecting people returning from injuries. Eriksson Ek's been out for weeks now, and Krill's having really bad runs with injuries. But hopefully this weekend they're back. But the big news there is St. Louis. Yes, St. Louis. The 10-game winning streak, bringing them into the wild card from out of nowhere, is phenomenal. If they keep up that, trend, as they go into playoffs, that's going to be phenomenal. Because 10 games is not to be sniffed at.
Yeah. No, you're right, 100%. It is going to be an interesting one, and I do look forward to it. This is definitely, I think we can all agree, and I think most hockey fans will agree, that this one, it gets really exciting in the NHL. Everybody, people watch the league, and as we know in the UK, the league means more than the playoffs do. In the UK, the way we look at it is you play all year to win the trophy, and you've slogged all year to get the main trophy. Playoffs are kind of like not a runner-up trophy. Yeah, like a runner-up trophy, kind of like a second trophy.
No. I'll give playoffs its place. It's more of a trophy than the Challenge Cup is. And
well, yeah, that's why
the Challenge Cup's currently in.
But that's why that's why I say second trophy.
Do you know what? As a hockey fan, I love that, and I think about it. I don't think about it through the start of the season, but when I get to this point in the season, I always think about it. I love the makeup of our league as opposed to the NHL, because it means I don't have to split my attention just as much. So I can concentrate on the Elite League. I can look at the Belfast Giants because they're my team. I can follow them without having to split my attention over to the NHL just as much, probably until February, March time, normally, unless you're a Preds fan this year. Then it was all over in October. But I like that we get to the end of our season, and just on timing as well, and the fact that we don't do a real playoffs, that your hockey journey gets to continue on for another month and a half or so, or a couple of months actually, when it comes to the NHL playoffs. So it's great. I love it. We're in a very privileged position as UK hockey fans that we get to do that. We get to concentrate on two leagues at their very, very most important parts, individually. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, good point. Okay, boys, I think that is it for our intro, as we call it, or our warm-up. I think it's time to get stuck into our period 1 of hockey and talk about what we really want to talk about in this period, and that is the big weekend, which is coming up. So let's get stuck into our period 1 of hockey. Okay, period 1 is a roundup of news stories from around the UK, and we're kicking off this one as we said we would. We didn't talk about it in our intro, and that's obviously the top end of the Elite League table. Obviously, the Belfast Giants are in the lead, 1 point ahead of the Sheffield Steelers, followed in third by the Nottingham Panthers. This weekend is what we're calling the big weekend, or the final weekend, which is going to be the same 3 teams which are still in contention going into this weekend. So it's going to make for a really thrilling finale. 2 games remain. 2 games remaining this weekend. Belfast lead the way on 76 points. Sheffield 1 point behind that, followed by Nottingham here 4 points behind first place. So obviously the Belfast Giants will face off against the Nottingham Panthers in the SSE Arena at 7 p.m. on Saturday night before travelling to the Motorpoint Arena, and the game has been moved to 5:30 p.m. The Sheffield Steelers host Cardiff Devils on Saturday night at 7 p.m. And then on Sunday, again, they'll face off against the Coventry Blaze. Both games. Damn it, John. Both games are starting at 5:30. For anybody who's not watching the podcast, John just literally ripped off one hat and put on a Coventry Blaze hat, which completely threw me there. Ahead of this weekend, basically let's have a look and see how things stand and what the remaining games and what needs to happen. So the Belfast Giants, as we say, are currently in first place, 52 games played, 76 points, and the remaining games are Nottingham Panthers at home and away. Giants need to win 2 games to clinch the Elite League title. They currently lead by 1 point, so defeating Nottingham twice will guarantee that the Steelers and Panthers can no longer meet the Giants' points, as the Giants will end up on 80 points, followed by Sheffield. If they won their 2 games, would end up on 79 points. Sheffield Steelers would need to hope for the Belfast Giants to drop at least 1 point or 2 points in total for them to jump over and win the Elite League. And I think there is the Nottingham Panthers then need 2 wins in regulation, and then they need the Steelers defeated as well. I think with 2 games defeated, so I think they need the Cardiff Devils and the Coventry Blaze to lose. So I think the tougher scenario is for the Nottingham. No offense to the Nottingham Panthers, but I think the tougher scenario is for the Nottingham Panthers. So even if they can do it and beat the Belfast Giants this weekend twice, they need the Sheffield Steelers to lose twice, which is going to be a tough thing that they're going to be waiting for. It's a tall order. There is a tie-breaking criteria should that happen, is a possibility. Obviously, as I said, if the Belfast Giants end one game on, and if they win one and end one as a tie and don't win in overtime and end up with 1 point, it will be a tie-break situation between the Belfast Giants and the Sheffield Steelers if the Sheffield Steelers win both of their games. And in that case, then it will be used. They'll use total number of points, total number of games that have won in regulation time, and then total number of games won regulation, overtime, and penalties, I believe. They'll look at fewest regulation losses, blah, there's a whole list of things. But boys, I mean, when you're thinking about weekends, exciting weekends of hockey and tense weekends of hockey and stress, this weekend they don't come any bigger than this weekend that's coming up. Dave, we're both in the arena on Saturday night for the Nottingham game and not in Saturday night, so it'll be a tense game. I'm already dreading it. I've got my biggest hoodie with the biggest with the longest hood on it as possible. For anybody who doesn't know, whenever it hits the penalties, hopefully it doesn't get to that stage. But as soon as it hits the overtime, if in this game, even if it gets down to the last 5 minutes, I'll probably be hid underneath a hood in my hoodie with my jersey up around that as well. So don't expect to see me for the last 5 minutes of the game, especially if it's close close in goals. Dave, what are you hoping?
Obviously, I'm hoping that the Giants win both games and don't have to rely on anything else. There's nothing more soul destroying than having to rely on another team to get you to win something, and we've been there, and the Coventry Blaze hat just proves it all. They have saved our bacon more than once over the years to allow us to win trophies. They would say they never did, nothing to do with it, but it just so happens that's the way it worked out. But at least the Giants are going in with some of the fate in their own hands. However, they're not coming off the best of form to try and win the league. Nottingham, on the other hand, they have been so much more improved since the halfway mark. You've heard me spout on about Grande since he started in the league. In my opinion, he's by far the best netminder the Elite League has this year, and in the last few years, he's been able to sort of allow the Panthers to sort of stretch and start to score more goals, and that has been self-evident with their change of fate since sort of the mid-season. It's going to be a tall order for the Giants, but as a Giants fan and having seen them pull victories out of nowhere this season, all season long, there's games that have been dead and buried, and we have no right to have came back, and we've came back and won in OT or penalty shootout. I hope it doesn't do that, but it means that the team at least has that character to dig deep and get the win. And I do think that Kiefer is the coach that can get that out of them. It won't stop me stressing out, and it won't stop me biting every fingernail I have off. And it'll be because I watched that Manchester game I got to the
I feel for you.
Glambos
Mm.
mistake, and I turned my phone off. I couldn't even have the flash scores ping up, because that wasn't just a error, that was destructive. You might as well have just passed it. And that there is, we can't have that. We can't have any of those. We can't even have we can't have a miss pass. Never mind an interception. It needs to be clinical. And unfortunately, the Giants haven't had that this year. Um, yeah, it's going to be. It's
Yeah,
going to stress the life out of me.
I 100% agree. I think it's interesting. Anytime I've been out this week and I've been wearing anything with the Giants logo on it of any kind. So, I was out at one of the local shops there 2 nights ago and just happened to have my Giants gilet on, and the guy who was working in the shop and seen it and was like, then started having a bit of a chat then. And even he says, "Oh, I don't go regularly, but we were chatting about obviously the Manchester game and everything else." And he said himself, the one thing he said, and I 100% agree with, is the team that needs to show up this weekend is the team that went up against the Cardiff Devils in the Challenge Cup. Now, people can argue that the Challenge Cup, the Devils didn't show up because obviously the scoreline didn't kind of look like they showed up, but we needed Belfast Giants team that dominates, and we need them to work. We need a full 60 minutes out of them both nights, not the period popping Giants who kind of show up, disappear, and then
We
show up
need
again for the final part. We need consistency, and we
we
need that
need
to
the
happen.
we need the Giants team that put Nottingham out of the Challenge Cup.
Yeah,
That's the
Yep.
team we
100%.
need,
Yep.
and that's how they have to play 120 minutes. But they need to
We
win
need to
both games.
play. We need to play like we're just playing Nottingham. I think that's the biggest thing. We need to not say the royal the Giants
Yes.
need to
But
ignore Sheffield
me and John,
this
we shoot
weekend.
we shooting up, are we, John? Yeah. Getting on the ice.
Yeah, I'm for it. I think I could. Look, I probably could have scored a goal against Belfast last Sunday. Like that's how bad it was. But no, we need to concentrate. We have one team to beat this entire weekend. We beat the Nottingham Panthers twice. We win the league. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
We've shown through the season that we can beat the Nottingham Panthers. We can put them to the sword.
Yeah.
We need to do that. We need to ignore whatever Sheffield are doing. It doesn't matter. I don't
So
want
here's
us to go in looking at it. It doesn't matter what the result is on Saturday. Like, I grant that there is a potential that they could win on Saturday. Then Sunday becomes whatever you want it to be. But go in and expect that team to win against Nottingham twice and win the league.
so
Now,
here's the
that's not
here's
going
the
to be
question.
easy, but
Here's the question. Just something you've mentioned there, John, and this is something, Dave, we were talking about in the last game, because obviously we had our phones and we seen what was going on our phones, and we were kind of like, okay, let's not talk about it, because obviously at the time whenever we were looking at our phones, Sheffield were being beaten, and we were kind of like, oh, okay, what's blah blah blah. We're kind of like, thinking, oh my god, this is brilliant, Dundee are doing it, kind of thing. And then obviously then the Belfast Giants themselves in the arena put up the out of town scoreboard up on the big screens, and then everybody around the arena starts to see it and see what's going on and everything else, and everybody starts to kind of going, oh, it's going to happen, kind of thing. What is your take on? What is your thoughts on that? Especially going into this important weekend. Does it help the Giants to see? Does it help the players when they see those score lines and having the fans' reactions being the way they are, in terms of the fans get really excited and get really built up?
Those players, for a start, shouldn't be worrying about what's happening outside the 60 minutes they have to play in their own game. The fact, I'll come on to talk about the way that the league has restructured the final day in a second, because I think it's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, Saturday can be whatever it is. Like the guys can be should be in the locker room in between periods, whatever. What I would expect will happen is there will be no out of town scoreboard in the SSE this weekend on
I would
Saturday.
hope so, personally.
I hope so, but I don't think it'll happen. I think it will be.
Unless Cardiff absolutely stripe the Steelers. If it's 1 or 2 goals, do not expect that out of town scoreboard to go up there. I would imagine that Kiefer will have been in the arena and will have said During play, during periods, absolutely not. Don't put an out of town scoreboard up. In between periods, yeah, it's fair game. It's fine. The fans are interested. That's great. Signal's a bit crap as well at different times. So if there's a big gap, then in goals, I mean, between Cardiff and Sheffield, yeah, put it up there. It doesn't matter. Even if Sheffield are winning, put it up between the periods so you know. Say Sheffield are 6-1 up, okay? Regardless of the scoreline, you know it's going back to Nottingham. That's where they're going to have to win it. So give the fans that information. The players don't need it. The players shouldn't need it. They know what they've got to do this weekend. They know that it's 2 wins or bust. Like that's the reality. That's where they need to be looking, especially given the fact that the Steelers are the team who are not playing another title contender. Like the Giants are playing another potential title contender in the Nottingham Panthers. That's what the concentration has to be, not the out of town scoreboard.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Separately
Last question.
To that, let's before you ask this question, let's talk about Sunday.
I was going to ask this question and then move on to Sunday, because the question I was going to ask is still relevant to the Saturday games before we move on to the Sunday. The question I was going to ask is, obviously, you, as you said, John, and it's a really good point, the Belfast Giants are playing a team who are in contention still for the league. The Sheffield Steelers, however, are playing a Cardiff Devils team who haven't had a great winning form. So that's maybe one reason why the Cardiff Devils will still want to play for that bragging rights of a win. But the Cardiff Devils are now at a point where they have clinched the playoff spot and are heading towards the playoffs, and don't have any kind of real need to play in the league anymore, in terms of they've nothing to win from the league. They've got their spot. They're not moving into the playoffs, and the playoffs are staying where they are, and they're going to play in the playoffs. What kind of Cardiff team do we have showing up on Saturday night against the Sheffield Steelers is the question I have.
The reality is that is the same for both of the teams that the Sheffield Steelers will face this weekend. Neither of them realistically are going to be budged from the position that they're in. The gaps are now too big. What they will be going out to do is to ruin the Steelers' party. The Steelers and the Giants are probably the best supported by their fans, but probably the most derided teams within other fan bases. So any opportunity that those other teams have to ruin the Steelers' run towards a title, they will take that. Now, Cardiff, I think, have the harder job of that. Yes, I know they're the higher placed team than Coventry, but Cardiff are having to play them in Sheffield. That team is not going to have to get themselves up for that, the Steelers team. They're going to have 7,500, 8,000 fans in that arena. I would be shocked if there's more than 100 travelling fans for that game coming from Cardiff Bay to Sheffield. That will be, they're already pushing for an orange out, for a sea of orange across that arena on Saturday night. That's going to be an incredibly tough game. But Cardiff will come out and will play hard, and I would expect no less. They have to treat that like a playoff game. It's a playoff training game, put it that way. If they want to win a trophy, they're probably going to have to go through either Belfast or Sheffield to do it. So if they want to get some proper competitive playoff ice time hockey under their skates, now's the time to do it. Exactly the same goes for Coventry. The bonus for Coventry is they're at home. It's their last league game of the season. They have a point to prove, and this is, Dave said it, this is where Coventry have unstuck league-winning potential teams before. Yep. Because teams roll in, think that it's just going to be a formality. Cardiff don't switch off. So that is what I expect. I expect a tough couple of games for Sheffield. I don't think these are going to be rollovers. Certainly no team wants to roll over and let Sheffield potentially win in their barn. Granted that Sheffield potentially could win it on Saturday in their barn if the Giants lose in regulation, or lose in any form, essentially. I think Sheffield could win it in their barn on Saturday. So, look, it's all up there, but there are no easy games. Belfast, Nottingham, hard games. Sheffield, 2 games, hard games.
So if the games go in the way we hope they go at the weekend on Saturday night, The Belfast Giants win on Saturday night. Sheffield, whatever, if it goes into the last game, as you've mentioned, John, the last game on Sunday night, the Elite League have made a decision to play both games at the same starting times.
Yeah.
Um,
So they've moved the Belfast Nottingham game, which was originally supposed to face off at 3:30. They've now moved that to, is it 5:30?
5:30, 5:30.
5:30, and that matches the Sheffield Coventry game, up the Coventry Blaze, and that's fantastic. And amazingly, we had a conversation at the SSE when I was over at the Guildford game with Mark, our most loyalist fan, and he was adamant that this last day of the season, all games should be facing off at the same time. Now, granted, the other game that's happening, which is completely inconsequential, is not. It's happening about half an hour, 45 minutes later or something. But we've got the potential for two of the last three games of the season could be the determining factor of where the league trophy goes. Last day, last couple of games, that's incredible. And from an entertainment value, that's great. From a Belfast Sheffield fan perspective, it's awful because your stomach is going to be in knots depending on what happens on Saturday. Saturday night, no one's going to sleep. Sunday morning, no one's going to be able to eat breakfast. It's just going to be horrendous. The only people who are going to have any fun are the people who are daytime drinking and going to those games. If you are one of those people, I salute you and I commend you and have the best day of your life. And I hope it goes your way for your team.
Yeah, if things are different, if I didn't have a little one at home, I know I would have been trying to talk Dave's ear into getting a flight and heading over to Nottingham. But
I
unfortunately,
got asked today on TikTok if I was going to Nottingham, and I had to say no.
no, I will be watching.
Same reason.
I have said I already know where I'm watching.
I had priced it, and then they sold out super quick. So they did. So
when there's a will, there's a way. It's funny you mentioned that, John, about obviously the change, and we were obviously talking about, as you mentioned, we were talking about it the last game with Mark, and on the day that they announced it, which was the Tuesday after we were at the game, they announced obviously the change of time. I did message Mark and I said, "Do you think someone was listening in from either the Giants organization or even the Elite League whenever they heard us talking in off ice and changed the games for both?" Changed games so that they were facing off together at the same time. And he's like, I know who the hell decided to make comments. When did they start to think about making common sense? Yeah, it's clearly that someone was listening to us on our conversation that was going on, or that someone else had the same ideas that we had.
The league just secretly wants us to run everything. Like, they just won't come and ask the actual question, but they're happy to bug us.
Just too embarrassed to ask us, you see.
So yes, exactly. This weekend, we'll finish the league. We are pretty excited, nervous, and excited in equal measures. And I'm sure we will put something out after this weekend. In some way, I'm sure it'll probably come via John or something through TikTok. But this weekend, we'll see it. We will be talking about it clearly in our next podcast, which will be in 2 weeks' time, which will be the week before the Thursday night before the playoff final weekend. Whoa, wow. Is that right?
I'll have a conversation with you offline because I think there's probably a better way to do all that.
Yeah, let's have a look. Let's have a conversation about that because that seems a bit. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that offline. Let's move on. We've took up a lot of time on that one part, but let's move on to our next story. And Dave, this is from you, and we're sticking with the Elite League for this one.
Yeah. So, our annual news this year on attendance records across Europe, and the Elite League has moved up to 7th place in the rankings in European ice hockey, with the Steelers climbing to 18th place for a club, and the Belfast Giants have moved up to 28th place, moving up 9 spots. Another huge increase on average for the Elite League, and moving up into the top 10 is huge, is massive. David say huge more. But it's it's always interesting because there has been years where we've seen those attendance records drop away. Um, uh, Historically, the years we lost um, Basingstoke and Newcastle and Hull and you know prior to their drop-offs, you've seen a drop in attendance league-wide. Um, we're we're still seeing the growth at the minute, which is really good. But we're also looking at losing a team, which is a really bad situation to be in.
We're not going
And
to
hopefully
notice the
we
Fife
can.
numbers disappearing, though. To be totally honest, like we had a conversation when I was back over about just this, about
Mhm.
attendances, because the Elite League had put out their statement, and I think we talked about this in the podcast as well
The
about
millionth,
like
that was their millionth.
my
Yeah.
standpoint on this, and I still firmly believe that this increase is because the arena teams are doing very, very well. I think it's because we seem to be in this period of Grand Slams as well. We've had 2 years. We could be on the cusp. Let's not say that I've just scudded it there, but like we are still potentially on the cusp of a third Grand Slam in 3 years, a Grand Slam of Grand Slams, let's call it. And that to me is where these are coming. We're seeing more early in the season sellouts for the likes of Sheffield, Belfast, Cardiff, even though they're quite small. Nottingham have had a massive resurgence this year, which they thoroughly deserve. And you could have probably told was going to happen anyway, given what happened in the previous season. Um, Across the league, I think attendances are clearly up, but that's not true absolutely everywhere. Fife, with how their season have gone, their crowds have tanked. There have been occasions where Guildford, their arena in highlight videos, seems to be very, very light on fans. So I don't know what's happening there. Obviously, they're stuck in the middle to lower half of the table. That's not what Guildford fans expect from the Guildford Flames. But it's not affecting the overall because the arenas are so much bigger than those rink teams that a drop of 1 or 200 fans at the rinks is not affecting overall because those 1 or 200 are being picked up and then some by the arenas, and that's where I think this is coming from.
So
Yeah.
this because it's based on average. I'm surprised it's not lower because it is an average per game per night per team. So a team that brings in, you know, Fife bringing in 200 should pull that average way, way, way down. And it's not, but I think that the reason that's not happening is it's the Coventry, it's the Glasgow, it's those teams that are in and around that average. The average is about 3,400 or something is what we
Yep.
get per match, inverted commas. Um,
Three, four,
but that's
seven,
sort of
nine.
yeah, so that's in and around the numbers for Cardiff and Glasgow, um, which is like their top end. You know, they're selling out, and that's
Yep.
roughly what they get. Um, I think that's what's keeping it stable as well. Yes, totally agree that the reason it's not bottomed out because of some of the losses in Fife is because of the big names, but the reason we have a solid base is that group that are pulling in that 3,000.
Yeah.
And also, even with Manchester having their issues this season, I believe their numbers, and I know they'll announce it, I think it's later at the end of the season, you'll get all the details, but um, from the ones I seen, they didn't have bad numbers, which is good to see, and hopefully it is correct. But those solid mid-table increases are needed. That's where you
Yeah.
make those average attendances. So yeah, so hopefully we'll
I mean,
see more teams do it.
whether depend who it is that's brought in those highest attendances or whatever it is, it doesn't matter in terms of the fact that at the end of the day, the Elite League is looking strong. The Elite League is sitting in seventh of overall European attendances, behind the likes of the Dell, who topped the chart, then Switzerland, KHL, SHL, Czech Extraliga, and the Finnish Liga. I mean, they're big time. You know, what I mean, they're huge they're huge European leagues, and the Elite League is falling in just behind that. I mean, it's not to be
Coming
sniffed
in,
at anyway.
Remind me how you could get maybe more fans coming. Oh yeah, TV deal.
Yeah, that'll be
So
something. That'll be something
the
we'll
league.
talk about in the next podcast
Oh,
because
I'm sure we will.
yeah.
Like the It's amazing that we have a 10-team league and only one team has a TV deal.
Yeah, and we're heading to playoffs, so we will talk about it in the next podcast.
Good.
Let's move on, if that's okay, guys. I'm going to
Yep.
move us on to our next story, and this is actually moving away from the Elite League. John, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Yeah, this was just, I wanted to highlight this because I think the NIHL played an absolute blinder this past week. We know that we don't keep a weather eye on the NIHL, but there are other podcasts who do and do a fantastic job of covering that league. Not least of all is Anthony with Banners on the Wall. Our very good friend Anthony over there, who is always keen to jump on with us whenever he gets the opportunity. But what the NIHL did with a few of their podcasts was they had those podcasts announce their all-star select teams across the space of a week, with those podcasts doing their weekly releases. So Banners on the Wall announced the picks for the Planet Ace NIHL National Division. The Bellingham Stars Starscast podcast announced the Northern Division all-star picks, while the Zero Pucks Given podcast announced the Southern equivalents for that. And this, to me, just is a league that knows its reach, it knows its media reach, and it understands what those podcasts, which are all, with the exception of the Bellingham Stars podcast, which is run by Craig, who we know, first ever guest on this podcast, and the NHL have harnessed the power of those podcasts and have built it into the product that they're putting out there with their all-stars and their all-star picks. I just want to highlight that because I think it's brilliant when you look at how difficult, not just us, but I know, having had conversations, other podcasts who cover the Elite League have, getting any sort of interaction with various teams across the league. Not to sound like a broken record like I have been for the last few years, but there are teams who just don't even reply to emails when you ask them for media opportunities or for interview opportunities. There are teams who will still classify us as a fan podcast. Glasgow, we keep telling you, we're not fans. We're definitely
we don't really
not
want to
Glasgow
talk to.
fans. If
we had a choice, we would never talk about it.
We'd like to talk to them, but still, they're harnessing the media that they've got available to them, and they're using it for great purpose. Imagine what the Elite League could do if it harnessed all the power that's in there, in those fan pod, and there are loads of us out there now. There is so much power to be grabbed by using the likes of us. We're putting it out there. We're available. Elite League, if you want us to announce the all-star team for the Elite League, we stand ready.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
won't want this because we'll just make fun of it.
They won't, because they're afraid of us.
Okay, that is the last story, I think, for this period. I believe so. Yep, it is
Yeah, because
indeed.
Dops have disappeared again and gone back to sleep, so we'll see them next season.
So with that, we will move swiftly on to our period 2 of hockey.
Hello and welcome to the period 2 of hockey, where we'll talk about everything that's not part of the United Kingdom. So, as usual, at Edinburgh, I don't have any topics in this. Actually, well, I do. Did anybody watch my video of was it McDavid throwing the helmet at your boy? Haven't seen that since the Gromaldis days.
What a man.
When you said there, did everybody watch? I thought you were going to lead with the really cool clip that you sent us from the Wild's 25th anniversary thing, which they put out last week. Was it? I believe. All about the growth of local talent and stuff.
First player that was born after the formation of the team played his first match.
Yeah, I think it was a great video, I thought. And yeah, I thought that's what you were leading with there for a second, but clearly not.
That's far too soppy for me. So I will. Okay, I'll go to Marty first, and we'll cover some of the NHL pieces, and then we'll circle around the rest of the world.
Yep, I only have the one, and I think it's I think it was a big announcement that came this week from the NHL, and that was the fact that the NHL Public Relations put out a statement to say that Rogers Communication and the NHL Hockey League have announced a new 12-year agreement for the national media rights to the NHL, for all the game platforms in Canada. So that'll take it through until the 2037-38-7, and it's worth 11 billion Canadian dollars of an agreement. That is a landmark.
Wonder is that value being impacted after today's announcements?
Awkward.
Are they going to lose 10% of that?
The fact, I suppose, the one thing you can say is it doesn't really know if it really comes as a big surprise. Hockey Night in Canada and hockey in general have been with Rogers for the last 10 years at least. Rogers have been obviously showing NHL hockey for that length of time. So adding an additional 12 years to that contract probably is a massive statement that the NHL says they have full trust that Rogers will continue to have the same commitment and the same level of professionalism for hockey as they have done and will continue to do so. I suppose the big thing to say about obviously Rogers Communication is the fact that we know that they do invest in their communications and in their broadcasts, bringing in different little platforms, bringing in the things like, the live video, which allows for the kids versions to kind of be able to follow the cartoons, to follow the different tracks and stuff. That's all Rogers. Rogers came up with those ideas and they've all put those all together. So I think that's a no-brainer for them to, I suppose, commit that level of money for that amount of years. So there you go. It was just a quick short one, but it was a big one from today that was announced from the NHL.
Yeah,
did you
it's
see
huge
that
statement.
part of the deal as well means fewer regional blackouts? So
I did.
They're actually reducing the regional blackout list of games. So whether that means I don't know if they're shrinking that blackout zone to be much more specific to the areas around teams or whatever they're doing. But that was the key thing for me, because it still bugs me. Like, obviously, I think currently the contract for NHL is still with Premier for the UK, and we still end up with, if you had an NHL pass on the app or on the website, you would still get those blackouts. It would be interesting to me to see if they would actually open that up to competition in this market, because I think the market is getting bigger for hockey in general. In fact, a story that we're going to talk about in period 3 kind of shows that market is getting bigger. So by opening it up to competition and not having those blackouts, because let's be honest, what is the point of a blackout when people want to pay the NHL for their subscription and you've got a streaming platform service in Premier that shows 1 or 2 live games a weekend, but it might be that game that you want to see and it's blacked out and you have to go and pay for another subscription? Why don't the NHL just say we're going to compete? Now, I get that they want the money from Premier, but I reckon they might get more money in general from more subscribers if they just opened that up. I think that would be an interesting way to do it.
Yeah,
Yep.
agree with you, John, because they've the world is sort of changing in that way when it comes to sport. We've seen it with a lot of stuff over the last few years. A lot of places are changing platforms, reducing platform bloat, and going to existing platforms. Amazon is a bit of an example of that with the Champions League. Randomly
That's kind of
turning on.
rankled me as well, that Amazon in the US has some rights to hockey and to broadcast hockey via their Prime platform, but over here we don't have that availability. We can't access that, which really, really bugs me.
Yeah. Huge statement for 12 years means everyone's locked in that they're still going to have TV rights, which is fantastic, no matter what happens with the league, which is great. So we'll move over to you, John, and we'll cover a certain man that's hoping that he'll get a certain goal.
Yeah, so we've been keeping tabs of this all season. The Great 8 is only 2 away now from tying the Great One for career goals. But what's more incredible, actually, is the manner in which it might happen. So after last night's game, Ovi scored, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but he's now got 2 to go. and he is potentially in line to actually match Gretzky's stats for games played and goals scored. So Gretzky played 1,487 games for his 894 goals. Alex Ovechkin has played 1,485 games and has scored 892 goals. He is 2 games short of Gretzky and 2 goals short of Gretzky. That's incredible if they tie it on the same game number. Now, if he was to get that extra goal on that game as well, that would be nuts. So let's say he gets 1 or 2 in the next game for the Caps, and then gets that big goal, that record-setting goal, 895. He gets that on game 1487. That would be nuts. That would put him up there for... And I get all the arguments about Gretzky played in a different era and Ovi, his career, whatever you want to say about his career. It would still be incredible. It's still a fantastic achievement. Absolutely nuts.
Still an absolutely huge record for anybody hitting those level of numbers. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that Gretzky wasn't known for his goals. He was known for his assists. And one thing is that particular record is probably never going to be broken. I think it's in the thousands for assists. It's unbelievable. But yeah, it's all crazy and fun times. Okay, well, I didn't ask Marty. Did he want to say anything there? Sorry, Marty.
No, I'm sorry. I'm busy doing something here. You continue on. I'm actually trying to put something in for our final period. I find something I want to add in. So you continue doing that while I do this little bit of work quickly.
Live breaking news, you know.
Shall I just continue with my stories, Dave?
Yes, you just continue with your stories. I would like you to do the CHL one next week.
Okay. You are, of course, the host of Period 2, so I will bow to your oversight and wisdom. So, the CHL earlier this week put out a statement confirming their first of 4 Challenger Leagues. First 4 of 5 Challenger Leagues, sorry. And they... I don't know what was going on. Like, they were being very cagey about who the 5th and final Challenger League was going to be. And I wonder if there were a lot of backroom conversations going on. But today we had it finally announced that the UK's Elite League will be confirmed as the 5th and final Challenger League to the CHL. That means that as we are going into the final weekend, and as we've already talked about, either Belfast, Sheffield or Nottingham as league winners will represent the Elite League in the CHL in the 2025-26 CHL season. Guys, it was probably going to happen, but it's not the first time that we've seen the Elite League almost put on the outside of the door, looking in through the window to start with. Was this another shot across the bow of the Elite League by the CHL?
I have this feeling that the CHL has a bit of a love-hate relationship with the Elite League. They love how we take their competition so seriously from the start, which not all their mega clubs do. You know, their existing sets that are preordained. I don't know what the term is, but already part of the competition from the organization. Non-challenger leagues, whatever they're called. They
Founder
don't
leagues.
necessarily founder leagues. That's it. They don't just take it as seriously because they're almost guaranteed to get through the group stages, because they are mammoths of clubs. But there's always the risk that you get a team like Glasgow is a good example, where Glasgow got through and had a great run, but they're operating with a lot smaller rink than what they would hope to be on their TV deal, and I think that's probably a big part of it. They were waiting until it was down to the last teams and say, well, right, well, they're all arena teams, bang, put them in. problem with that
To be
is
fair,
there's
if that
no.
was the decision, they could have made that a while ago, because the only other team that was really in contention like a few weeks ago was Cardiff. And yes, it's a smaller
I
arena.
wonder if
Rink.
that's what the problem is. Yeah, I wonder if that was one of the issues. Is there a capacity thing being put on it?
Well, they say that, but as part of this news release that was put out, they actually were at pains to point out the fact that the Elite League attendance through the Sheffield Steelers during this last campaign was the highest in the CHL.
Oh yeah.
They had an average attendance at their home games of 8,229, which saw them top the overall average standings by over 1,500 fans. So that shows you how some elite league teams look at the CHL and think we want to and we need to be successful at this level. And we are getting more successful. Let's not take away how good the Steelers did this year. And until this came out, I didn't actually realise that they actually beat the runners-up and the eventual champions through the group stage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
And
that tells you something.
I also have a feeling was there a big part of them didn't want two Elite League clubs next year.
Yep.
Because remember, Cardiff are in because of the CHL win. So they're in regardless into the CHL.
Conti Cup.
Sorry, Conti Cup win. So they're in, and I'm wondering, did they not want two from the same league from our?
Well,
from
I
the league?
wonder. Sorry, I'd forgotten about that Conti Cup. So I wonder, was the issue the CHL didn't want another situation where a league winner goes, no, we don't want to compete, and it becomes this whole thing again.
Yeah. Because that was
not
embarrassing.
that it was the CHL; it was the Conti Cup was the issue. It was Guildford saying no to the Conti Cup, and then was it who
Sheffield
was it
said
that
no to
also said no? Was it Sheffield that time?
Yeah.
So look, whatever it was, that's the decisions we made. The Elite League will be a challenger league to the CHL, and Dave, as you rightly say, I'd completely forgotten. The winner will join the Cardiff Devils in CHL action this season.
Yeah. All right, and then the final piece, which is huge news. We'll fire back to you, John.
Yep. So Team GB have named their squad for the 2025 IIHF World Championships Division 1A, which will be taking place in Romania. GB will face Romania along with Italy, Japan, Poland and Ukraine from the 27th of April to the 3rd of May. And I'm not even going to attempt to say where that is. I know normally I have a stab at it, but there's way too many E's, A's, I's and other vowels in there, and there's little funny letter things above some of the letters as well. I'm not going to do it. But what I will do is I'll rattle down through the squad announcement. In net, we have Ben Bounds, Lucas Brown and Jackson Whistle have been selected to go between the nets, with a lot of chat being that Jackson Whistle is the number one netminder heading into this tournament. In defence, Josh Batch, David Clements, Nathaniel Halbert, Joe Hazeldine, Ben O'Connor, Mark Richardson and Josh Tetlow will patrol the blue line. This being, of course, Ben O'Connor's last international stint, as he looks like he is hanging them up both domestically and internationally.
But, Ben O'Connor, fan of the podcast,
Fan of the podcast. And in the forwards, Ollie Bettridge, Kieran Brown gets his first call-up, Ben Davies, Robert Dowd, Sam Duggan, the, as always, present Liam Kirk, Robert Lakovitz, Ben Lake, Cade Nielsen, Logan Nielsen, Brett Perlini, Cole Shudra and Josh Waller all get the call-ups in the forwards. Aside from that as well, we also have the next gen who will be going along with the squad. So Archie Hazeldine, Jack Hopkins, Jordan Kelsall and Patrick Larkin will all go along as part of the next gen project with the squad as well. Guys, this is going to be an interesting tournament because there's a few big names are no longer available for international selection. This is the beginning of a new era for Team GB.
Yeah.
Sorry, Davey, you said something there before. No,
It's
okay. I was just to say 100%. That's spot on, exactly as you say. I mean, we've had announcements obviously this season of retirements, and we see a full list of new players coming in for this next tournament. As you say, it is like a new era for Team GB. Yeah, massive changes.
Yeah, it's
Dave?
gonna be interesting to watch. I think it's gonna be with the issues last year. Um, I think it's gonna be one to watch to see what they can do. Because it is sort of, as we said, it's like a restart. And there's everything to play for there. Um, Good seeing some returning faces. Obviously, Ben having his last year, Whistle still being there, and Ben Lake, being there as well. It's always good to see. But it'll make it for a more. I will find it a more interesting match to watch because we don't get to see a lot of these guys. Um, an awful lot being Giants fans, so it's always good to see that different crop.
Yep.
And then Anthony there with Ben O'Connor to the EIHL. I still think he's coming to the Giants. Does he not have an open contract or something? Do you not remember
What do I
those
think?
rumors for what, like 10 years? He was rumored that he was coming to the Giants. But yeah, you're probably not right, or you're probably right. But I think the Dundee Stars would love to keep him up there.
Well, I think he's done. So he's been doing the handshakes and everything as he's been sort of wrapping up games in different places. I know he got a fairly good send off in Sheffield just this past weekend. So it's looking like the beginning of the end for Ben. Unfortunately, I definitely, not just because he came on here and chatted to us, but just in game, he's been fantastic. And who could forget the hand pass to Colin Shields for that goal?
That's it. Yeah. And he's such a sound bloke. He's not compared to some of the people we've had to fight to get the chat to. When we were in Guildford, he came out and found us. He came out running around the rink trying to figure out where we were, which is amazing. We're not used to that sort of treatment. So such a good guy.
Yep, definitely.
All right. If we have nothing else for period 2, nope, we're all good. We will wrap it up and move on to period 3.
Welcome to period 3, our general Knocky
News.
Knocky News is for everything and anything else in the world of hockey that doesn't fit neatly into periods 1 or 2, or generally where we just have to move things around and throw them into 3, or very occasionally we like to look at jerseys in period 3. And we will do that because that's what Marty was panically doing before we, or while we were discussing period 2. We didn't have any jerseys until he did that work, so I am deeply, deeply interested to see what he has for us. But I'm going to start with my own story, guys, because I saw this and I thought this was really, really interesting. So, not the regular source you would think I would be going to for news and stories from the world of ice hockey, but I had a look at Tech Radar. And they had an interesting story from a guy who clearly, John Anthony De Soto, who clearly lives up here in Scotland because through his story he talks about going to Edinburgh Capitals games. He has used AI to pick him an NHL team. So he used ChatGPT and Gemini Deep Research to help him figure out what team he should support when he got taken to a couple of SNL games by a friend, which clearly were Edinburgh Capitals games, and he says he's now been back to more Edinburgh games and he's hooked on the sport. Started looking into NHL, watched a few games, but still wasn't sure what team he wanted to follow. So he thought, right, I'm going to do a bit of research using these AI tools, and this is going to spit out for me what team I should support. So he started off by asking it to do some fun AI generated quizzes to try and figure out what team it might be that he should be supporting. He said it was great for fun little projects like that, not overly reliable, and it kind of spat out a generic answer. Now, Marty, don't take umbrage at this because that generic answer was the Toronto Maple Leafs. He then went on a little bit more and he thought, right, let's take it away from the quiz. Let's do multiple choice. And interestingly enough, again, that spat out the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe there's something to this. But then he thought, I want to actually watch these games. I want to watch them live. So he put into these tools, figure out the average face-off time for NHL teams, somewhere between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. So that I can... What percentage of those face-offs in local time sort of fall around there? And he got some interesting results out of that. He got the likes of the Tampa Bay Lightning, which apparently had about 28% of their games faced off within that window. He then used a different tool and got the New York Rangers, which weirdly was telling him it was only 14% of games would be falling within that window for him. But then he thought that's not right. Like their East Coast team, surely there's more games are going to fall within that window. So what he did was he ran the tool again and got completely different answers this time. And in particular, Gemini told him that somehow 45% of the Montreal Canadiens games were going to fall within that window. Now, I ain't no geography major, but I know fine rightly that Montreal is a good bit further west than New York. And there ain't no way that those games are all facing off in that window. So, yeah, he's gone through it all. But what's his decision been? Well, he went back through it all, and he's actually just done what most of us do and go, I like Montreal. I've been to Montreal. I'm a French speaker, so I'm a Habs fan.
Oh, I thought you were going to say at the end of the day, and being a Toronto fan, even from the start. I have to go through all of that.
Even AI can't convince people to be a Leafs fan, Marty. But
you're wanting to. Excuse me. You're wanting. Yeah, did you say you want to follow them for? Yeah.
So, on loan. Those dreaded two words. But it got me interested, guys. So I wanted to ask you guys actually, and I kind of wish Aaron was here as well because I kind of wanted this to be everyone. But Marty, how and why did you pick the Toronto Maple Leafs as your team?
I picked the Toronto Maple Leafs as my team because a family friend lives in Kitchener, over in Canada, and he's a Toronto fan. He's an ice hockey player. He's a recce ice hockey player, and he is a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and sent me over a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey with my sister when she was over back in mid 2000s. So my five first Toronto jersey that I still wear, which is the blue one, came from Canada from him, and that's where that all came from. That's how I ended up becoming a Toronto fan.
There you go. Dave, what about Minnesota Wild? Why the Wild for you?
The Minnesota Wild, it's nothing too extreme. It sort of came about after watching some of the first Giants games at the opening year, and getting hooked on the sport in a sort of casual sense, and watching late night Channel 5 NHL. And there was, lo and behold, there was a team that came out and was expanded in the same year, in the 2000s. So that was the Minnesota Wild.
Okay. Anthony with a brilliant one there. If AI chooses Toronto to support, your AI must be HAL 9000.
I think I know.
You can't do that, Dave.
So I know the story. I know Aaron's not here. I do know the story of Aaron and how he ended up being a Flyers fan. So back during like the mid 2000s again in Belfast, in the Giants had a ring announcer. That's not wrestling. He had a rink compare rink announcer or whatever you want to call them, who Aaron ended up becoming friends with through a certain fruit shop. And when they were working together in this fruit shop, he was all like, "Oh, you're going to the Giants, yeah?" And we obviously knew he was voice of the Giants at the time, and he basically just said that he just brought in pretty much a Flyers jersey into Aaron and went, "There you go, you're a Flyers fan." Pretty much is, I think, the main story for us. I think that's short of it, but I think that's how it kind of worked.
Let's be honest though. Aaron is basically a Boston Bruins fan now anyway, so like we'll need to get the story of that next time he's on the team that he actually supports. Not
and what about you, John?
Used to support.
What about you? How did Nashville come back?
It's Nashville Predators were selected because I had family that were in Tennessee, and obviously Nashville in Tennessee, and that's why I've got all the Preds gear, and it's also why I've got a Tennessee Titans jersey as well. Both teams do absolutely nothing through every season, so I expect nothing, and every year I'm not shocked or surprised.
I love Anthony's comment there about Aaron is a Flyers fan for the same reason anyone's a Flyers fan. You hate people and love the well, you know. I think Aaron's more of a pacifist.
Honestly, back in the day, I absolutely would have been a Flyers fan. Like if I'd been a hockey fan like 10 years earlier, like 100%. The Broad Street Bullies, like all that sort of stuff. That's kind of, it's that Hollywood hockey. It's like I absolutely loved that, but yeah, I made like a poorly informed grown up decision and supported the Preds, and now I'm too far in. I can't go back now. I'm kind of stuck with them. Marty, you have got some jerseys for us to look at.
I do, and you have already seen these jerseys technically, but I want to put them up and just so that others can see these jerseys. But we had I want to make sure we put this up because it was a mix of Dave and Aaron both doing their homeworks last week, and
then I didn't put it into the podcast.
I didn't put it in, and I made a comment about how they did their homework, and I was very pleased and happy with them. And then it wasn't in here, so I thought we may as well put them up because the homework was done. So the AHL, we'll start off in the AHL. They seem to have had a themed night for two teams anyway. Decided to have Star Wars themed nights. So two teams in the AHL. So we had the Bakersfield Condors and the Providence Bruins. Both
There's
done
another one.
Oh, was there? I missed that one. Who's that?
The Iowa Wild had their Iowa Wookies again.
Same jersey.
Yep, same jersey.
Okay, well, we've seen it before. We'll maybe add that in. But let's start off with those. So we'll start off with the Bakersfield Condors. So they went with the Rebels-themed jersey as part of their game. And they also, as part of this game, the crowd, just the sheer atmosphere in the crowd, all the fans were given inflatable, I don't know if they were inflatable or not, but they were given lightsabers in the crowd, and so all of the rink was just lit up with different colored variations of lightsabers, and I just thought
droids in their concourse.
Oh my word, it was amazing. That's how you do a Star Wars night, I think, and that's exactly what you said.
You know what I love about it is the Arabesh above the players' names. That's their name in Arabesh.
Amazing.
It's class.
Just if you didn't know, we are massive just geeks as well, and one of the big things that we all have in common is Star Wars. We are all massive Star Wars fans. There's Millennium Falcon here behind me, and I think Aaron has one also behind him, and I'm sure if you look on other people's,
my pops have the entire cast of Rebels.
Yeah, I also have
for Rebels.
Loads of Star Wars things in here behind me. So yeah, we're massive Star Wars fans. So this is the first one. The Providence Bruins, then their version was the Chewbacca Wookiee style jersey. Obviously taking a classic style Bruins Providence jersey from back in the day and replaced the bear with the Chewbacca head, which is a very simplistic thing to do, but very effective because it is a throwback jersey. I don't
like it because it looks. I don't like it because he looks too combed, like too.
He looks like Christmas special.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's like they're trying to do sexy Chewy. Like I really don't like it.
Late night Chewy.
Yeah, it's creepy, and he's like giving side eye and everything as well. It's like he's coming on to me. Like I really, really don't like it.
I love the Providence, the wee badge on the chest with the AT-AT, the AT-AT.
Yes, that's right.
It's class.
Nice touch. And the last jersey that he's put in, which I'm surprised you didn't. So the Belfast Giants had about 2 weeks ago, I think now, they had their now what's becoming an annual country night, which let's not get started on Belfast Giants country night because they had a jersey, fair enough, and it was kind of like a poncho style, whatever it was, cowboy style jersey, whatever you want to call it. And then on the night itself, there was absolutely nothing really about that night in the arena that shouted, "This is country." Like there was no. Last year they did an effort and they had like country music on and they tried to do whatever it was and people were getting really into it. It was line dance and stuff and everything else was going on. This year it just felt lazy. It felt like, oh, we'll do the jersey. We'll have Bomber's dad handing out pucks and everything else and themed and whatever it is. But the music was just, it made no sense. Like it didn't.
My question is, when the Giants do a country theme night, like I get they're going for the North American country, but there is a very, very firm keeping our country culture in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Why is the DJ for the night not just Uncle Hugo?
Because it's this new guy that they've got behind the booth, who just like
JD or something.
Beat John Boy. Oh, we're not going to put that up from Anthony. Sorry, I just
I'm not putting that comment up. I spotted that. No, Anthony. No, bad.
DJ John Boy is all I keep hearing, and actually, you know what? Everyone to their own. People have their own variation of taste in music, and people seem to love dance music or whatever it is. But I'm not a fan of dance music, and sometimes.
Do you know how much like old men we sound right now?
I know, no, but it's not even old.
Shaking our hands to the sky, you know.
It's not even
yells at loud music.
It's not even like I still listen. I love loud music as much as the next person, but I like loud music when it's rocky, metal, grungy. I like that type of loud music.
So you like everything from the late 90s to the early 90s, which is basically you're an angry old man yelling at music that you don't like because it's too new.
Okay, moving on. No, see, the thing would be if it was new stuff, that would be a difference. But the fact that the music that's being played,
have we actually got this jersey because of how much we've been talking about it?
Anyway,
it's actually on the slide.
The British, it's the British Columbia Hockey League (BCHL), and it's a team called the Cowden Capitals, and they've come out with their own country design for their jersey, which looks like this.
Good Lord, that is a Canadian tuxedo. They have boys full denim. I really love all of that is actual denim and not like hockey grade material.
I mean,
want it all to be heavily starched denim.
I suppose the argument here is it is a proper country. It's a proper country town where this team plays. I was looking them up and they are a proper country town. So this makes sense. But yeah, the dungaree style jersey with the matching.
I bet they had Uncle Hugo on the decks that night.
I'm sure they did. But I thought these were well.
No one was saying their night wasn't country.
Definitely not. But yeah,
would
so that's the last.
Would you like to see the Iowa Wild jersey?
Yes, please. Nice.
That's not as good as the one. It's still good, but it's not as good as the one they had last year.
It's still good, but it's maybe not as good. Let me just go through. I do like that it's sewn patches. That's always a winner for me. It's scary chewy, not sexy chewy. So again,
I like the wild trees in the back are good. You know he's just beat up
winning.
the wild.
It's winning for me. It's winning for me as opposed to the other one. But there you are.
There you go. I mean, I couldn't let a podcast go, John. When I seen in the running order there was no jerseys, I couldn't let a podcast go without at least having some form of jerseys in there.
Well, do you know what?
Our next jerseys
what I completely forgot is we had I think possibly a leak of this year's playoff jerseys. I've noticed on Reddit, so we might look at that on the next podcast because Again, I know we're going to talk about it off air, but I think the likelihood is that we'll probably jump on here before playoff weekend to kind of look at how things are shaping up and then probably do something before. But it might be that we have a look at all 10 teams, even though only 8 are moving forward. But as we know, all 10 teams get lovely playoff jerseys designed by the outstanding technical design team at Rhino.
So is this the last year of Rhino then?
Beauties. What's that?
Is this the last year of Rhino though, isn't it? Didn't Warrior
hope
sign
so.
a deal with the league wide for next year? I have this
If
in the
they
back of my
have,
head,
fantastic. I'm looking forward to it.
like a flipping itch in the back of my head. That I read that somewhere.
Well, do you know what, Dave? For the next podcast, that's your homework. Go and figure that out.
Yes, I'll go figure that out. If not, Elite League contact Warrior and sort of. Can't have Rhino
Marty,
anywhere
with
near
that,
them.
with that, there's nothing left in period 3. I'll hand it over to you.
And that means we have had a successful full podcast this week, which
have.
is phew. No, that was great. I'm so glad we got through this full podcast this time, and we had no technical issues at all, which is always better for me, because then I don't have to fiercely edit at the end or worry about it. And so, yes, thank God. With that, we will sign off for this week. As John said, we will probably go off and have a chat about what we're going to do about the next podcast. Will that be 2 weeks? Will that be sooner? Who knows? We'll wait and see. But we will let you know on our social media channels. And that's a nice plug for our social media. You can check us out on all social media channels. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok at Door14. We are also, you can check out this podcast, all the other podcasts, and old content from blogs and stuff from back in the day on our website, door14hockey.com. If you're not following us already on, or if you're not already following us on YouTube and whatever it is, subscribed, you can do that on one of the buttons around here somewhere with the little bell to notify you whenever we're going to go live. And as we always do, we ask, if you are listening to us and the traditional podcast provider of choice, if you haven't done so, please don't forget to review or leave us a star rating or whatever it is on your podcast provider of choice, as it does help us and the algorithm and all that stuff. So it is highly appreciated. With that, we will sign off for this week. I'm Marty.
I'm Dave.
I'm John.
Have a great